Welcome to our conversation and virtual studio visit with Black Women of Print. I'm Jenny Gibbs, Executive Director of the IFPDA and the IFPDA Foundation. This is the final week of Print Month, held in conjunction with the IFPDA Fine Art Print Fair, which is currently hosted online with Artsy through Sunday, November 1st. Today's program will be introduced and moderated by Ann Marshall of Durham Press, known for their editions with Mickaleen Thomas, Hervin Anderson, Chitra Ganesh, Beatrice Milhas, Jacob Hashimoto, and many others. On this Saturday, October 31st, the final weekend of Print Month and the IFPDA Fine Art Print Fair, we'll be traveling via Zoom for a studio visit to Durham Press with Ann's partner, master printer Jean-Paul Russell. Today's program was conceived and initiated by Ann, and she'll start off with the introductions. If you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box, and we will be getting to as many questions as we can in the final 15 minutes of the program. And with that, I will turn over the Zoom baton to Ann.
Hi, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for these great IFPDA talks this month. I'm excited to introduce to you today 3 of the founding members of a fantastic new organization started in 2018 called Black Women of Print. Today we will meet and visit the studios of 3 of the founding members, Deleta Martin, Tanekeya Word, and Leslie Diuguid, to learn about their individual practices, what they're currently working on, and their involvement and hopes for Black Women of Print. We'll wrap it up with Q&A at the end, where we can also learn about how we in this audience and organizations like the IFPDA can help support them in making a more just and equitable print world. To begin, Black Women of Print is the brainchild of Tanekeya Word, a writer, scholar, artist, and printmaker who conceived the group after recognizing this stunning lack of representation of Black women in the history of printmaking. While the work of Elizabeth Catlett easily comes to mind for most of us, she is likely the only historical Black woman printmaker we know and see in our art history books. Tanekeya knew the history was much richer and fuller and decided she wanted to use her talents to change this and elevate the voices, past, present, and future of Black women printmakers. She is currently finishing a book on the history of Black women in print, and this year during Women's Print Month, she highlighted 31 Black women printmakers on her Instagram page, detailing the fascinating contributions each of these women has made to the history of art. In Tanekeya's words, "I wanted to create a space where intergenerational Black women printmakers could form bonds like Margaret Taylor, Goss Burroughs, and Elizabeth Catlett. From novice to masters of printmaking, it is my hope that we can all learn something from one another, support one another, and also have a home, so that the world can get to know the intersectional narratives of Black womanhood and our creative processes." Founding members of the organization include Angela Pilgrim, Deleta Martin, Jennifer Matt Watkins, Latoya Hobbs, Stephanie Santana, Leslie Diuguid, and of course, Tanekeya Word. Now we have the slide up. Let me introduce you to our speakers. Deleta Martin, an established printmaker, educator, and visual artist with her BFA in drawing from Texas Southern University and an MFA in printmaking from Purdue. She was formerly a member of the fine arts faculty at UA Little Rock in Arkansas and now has her own gallery and studio in Huffman, Texas. She will be followed by Tanekeya Word, who did her BA in English and African Studies at Howard University, her MA in Arts Management at American University, and is now finishing her doctorate from the University of Wisconsin, focusing on the intersections of urban education, art education, and third space as it pertains to Black women in the arts. Her press is called Womanist Press, and she'll be joining us from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And finally, we'll hear from the brilliant and energetic Leslie Diuguid of Diuguid Press, founded in 2017 in Brooklyn, New York. Leslie earned her BFA at the Kansas City Art Institute in printmaking and has honed her printmaking skills working in print shops in Kansas City and many of the big shops in New York City. With that, let me please welcome Deleta Martin. Thank you.
I am really excited to be able to talk to you about Black Women of Print, as well as my studio and my own personal practice. When Tanekeya first reached out to me about Black Women of Print, I was so excited to be a part of creating a space for Black women to explore printmaking, to share their techniques, their knowledge in the field. You know, just being a printmaker and learning printmaking for the first time, I was an adult. I didn't have printmaking in undergrad, and I didn't do printmaking in high school. So I had to find women who looked like me. I had to actively go out and find and seek those women who were creating prints, because I was curious. I wanted to know, you know, how many Black women were creating prints, how many women of color were creating prints. So to be a part of founding a space that uplifts these women in our community has been one of the most rewarding things that I've had to that I've been a part of. So I thank Tanikia for reaching out to me and allowing me to be a part in that way. So today I'm just going to take you on a quick tour of my studio space and talk about some of the projects that I'm currently working on. So I was in Little Rock until around 2014. I moved back to the Houston area, Huffman, Texas, right outside of Houston. I think I'm about 45 miles outside the city center, but I moved here to specifically build a studio space for printmaking. And, you know, it's a private studio, but I invite friends to come in, and, you know, I always love for people to come into the studio and love to talk shop and talk about what I do and share in any way that I can. So I built the studio. We started building the studio in about 2016, and we have continued to add on. We have one more addition that we'll be adding on to the studio. So I'll just take you on a quick tour. So the space that you're looking at now is actually my original space that we started off with. Here, I'll take you, as we move closer to the front of the studio, I have 3 presses that I have in the studio. I also have presses in my garage. So I kind of make my studio wherever I can. Well, not necessarily wherever I can, but my husband always teases me because it's like, you're supposed to be in your studio working, but you're in the dining room working. So I like to keep equipment supplies on hand at all times. So I have a small library here where I love reading about art. I love studying all types of art, anything from, I think that I like to cross-pollinate printmaking with other mediums, as you've seen in my work. If you're familiar with my work, you can see painting, you can see drawing, installation, all types of other mediums in printmaking, and as well as printmaking. So, you know, I have books on all of those. So that's my kind of printing press area. I love to sew in my work as well. And here is my sewing area here. I have all my threads that are numbered, and also I'll get in a little closer here, that are numbered and have, you know, little samples of the colors on them as well. So this is the first part of the studio. This is also a work area that I have here. Silk screening, flat files. So really just an open concept, and then being able to just kind of section the areas off. So before we leave this section, I'm going to show you some works that I'm currently working on for an exhibition. And I will show you, actually, I'll show you these first. So these are some of the smaller pieces. I generally do not work small. I work really large. And so these are some of the smaller pieces you can see here. And I won't go into any detail about the pieces. If you have any questions during Q&A, I'll be happy to share that what information with you. So the exhibition opens in March of 2021. And the show it will be here in Beaumont, Texas. And the show is called Conjure. And it'll be featuring mostly new works or works that have not been exhibited. And I'll get in closer to some of these. So again, you see here, I do a lot of mixed media, printed backgrounds. And as you can see, the pieces are fairly large. So I'm gonna back up a little bit so you'll be able to get a good view, maybe a good idea of how large the works are. So another project that I'm working on that I want to talk about really quickly is a project that I started during the pandemic, and it really talks about the social discourse that's going on now, the murders, the political upheaval and everything. But I did a project with my son called Let Me Breathe, and with my niece called Say My Name. And I created these works, and I got a lot of inquiry about the pieces. And I was like, well, the works are for my son and for my niece, so the originals won't be sold. But my son was really interested in selling prints and donating the money for a cause. And so we searched for causes, and we tried to figure out, what organizations we would be able to work with. And we didn't find anything that we were really interested in. So we decided to start our own organization called Black Box Press Foundation. And we would use the funds that we generated from the prints to fund artists, exhibitions, and work with artists who are creating art that addresses social and political change. And so we're really excited to do our first artist call for proposals, and that will be going out December 1st, and funding will begin January of 2021. So we're very excited about that. We actually still have prints available, and I'll show you those again. Prints are available on my website, on Black Box Press website, but 100% of the funds will go towards that cause. And so it's something that I want to continue to do. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to raise enough funds to continue this, for many years to come. So here we have, there's bathroom, also dark room / dark room. So our next room that we're going to go into is really kind of like my office sitting area. And this is where I kind of, I usually do my Zoom meetings here. I do my research here. This bookshelf that you see here is actually where I hold all of my current research, everything that I'm studying currently for works that I'm working on. And this is also a work area. I generally work on the floor whenever I work, but sometimes I pin the work up just to kind of get an idea of what needs to happen next. And this is my letterpress shop. As you can see, it's a little bit cluttered, but it started off actually as a gallery space. And I received an email from my mentor saying that there was a letterpress shop in New Orleans that was for sale. I literally called them on a Friday, drove to New Orleans Saturday morning, and we had a print shop by Monday. So that's that area. And last but not least, I am working on a collaboration with High Point Center for Printmaking. And here are some proofs from that project. There are several portraits that will be included in the portfolio. And here are two proofs from that. So it's work in progress, but I'm really excited to be working on this. This was a concept that I had in my mind for a really long time, for many, many years, and wasn't quite sure how I would execute this project. And I was able to connect with High Point and work with their master printer to get the work to the stage that it is now. So lots of busy work going on in the studio, lots of things happening. So welcome to Black Box Press, and thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tanikia Word. I'll be showing you a couple things within my particular space. I'm taking you to my desk, my analog desk on the upper part of my studio, the art studio, as the print studio is in the works and it'll be in the basement. So right now, I like to show you exactly like various material culture pieces that have shaped me and has continued to expand me. I try to figure out like a triad. I'm very interested in triads. How can I simultaneously connect theory, the technical skills of printmaking, as well as painting, since I'm also a painter, a printmaker, and scholar. So I'm going to show you a few things on my desk. I'm going to show you my bookcase, and then I'm going to reveal the 2019 portfolio for Black Women of Print, which has never been seen. Give me 1 second to flip you around. Okay. So this is my mood board wall. Let me get back a little bit. So within my analog desk, I have a huge mood board wall, and there's my desk. And I'll get up closer so that you can see. Everything that I have questions for, I either print out or paint something or have a drawing there. I also have pictures, inspiration work there as well, quotes, specifically a lot of bell hooks, Lucille Clifton and Alice Walker, because of womanism theory and Black feminist thought. So it shows up in my work a lot. This particular piece, I have a picture of Josephine Baker. That is an inspiration to me because this is her growing collard greens in Paris at her chateau. So just bringing home and creating place in spaces that are not familiar. This piece is the original drawing that I did for the We Were There piece. So I did a lot of hand drawing for all of before I scanned it in to turn it into the poster. And we're super excited about that because it was recently acquired by the Met. More work. Black hair shows up a lot within my work. I reimagine it. So I'll be showing you some things that are on my desk about that too. So now I'm gonna take you to my desk. This is a piece that I began working on at a residency, and it's going to be a 100 comb series. It will look at the ways in which it's called Tender, a sisterhood anthem. So it's a song of praise in regards to Black sisterhood. It's also a dichotomy in which I talk about tender as an emotion as well as tender-headed. So it's the communal relationship of how we take care of ourselves and take care of one another. And this is basically a COVID edition with the mask. So this, I'll be making 5 box sets for that on handmade paper, but I recently started working on taking a quarter of those 100 and I'll be creating editions for those, varied editions. So this is a work in progress for this one, and they'll be up on my Womanist Press shop on Friday. And then I'd also love to show you another piece. These are two pieces from my Supernova series. I took one specific image that I reimagined from an African Fulani hairstyle, and I decided to make 29 unique varied pieces. This is letterpress. And I have these custom boxes made for it because when they're hanging up as a grid, I want it to look like it's suspended. There are mappings from space and the natural world within the hair. And I'll show you one more from the series. There's 29 of these, and you can go on a link for Artsy. Right now, 15 of them are at Copland Del Rio Gallery in the Drawing the Ghost exhibition curated by Robert Pruitt. And now I'd like to show you all the 2019 inaugural portfolio for Black Women of Print. I creative directed and curated the portfolio, and it was a labor of love. So we decided to look at the Sankofa principle, and the book is called Continuum. The portfolio is called Continuum. And the Sankofa principle is an African Adinkra symbol, and it means to go back and take. So this is the booklet that comes in the portfolio, and inside of the booklet we'll have various pieces. So it has letterpress, Rizzo, screen printing, all inside the book because I wanted to take something from every piece. This work is Deleta's piece. So she chose to take a visual element. The goal of the portfolio was to take a visual element from a foremother Black woman printmaker and expand it. So she had Elizabeth Catlett, and you can find more details on our new website next month about the portfolio. Next up, we have Jennifer Mack Watkins, who chose Betty Saar. We have Latoya Hobbs, who chose Margaret T.G. Burroughs. And here she chose the iconic black and white that Margaret T.G. Burroughs would have in her work. Jennifer chose to have iconography, which is the targets, because iconography is seen a lot in the assemblage work of Betty Saar. And you can see the contouring marks within Deleta's work as like Elizabeth Catlett's, a very Deleta. This is the piece that I created called Starshine and Clay. The title was taken from a Lucille Clifton piece, Won't You Celebrate Me? And I chose Allison Saar. And the visual element that I went with is the fantastical hair that she always has when she's looking at the feminine power within her work. And I had my head going to the right. She typically has the heads going to the left. Next up, we have Stephanie Santana. And she chose Belkis Ayan. And her work looks at Black interiority. And she decided to use screen print for this and have the mark makings kind of like the calligraph that Belkis used. Next up, we have Leslie Diuguid. And she chose her mentor, Wanda Ewing. And Wanda Ewan, she just had such a fantastic way that she represented women and this comical edge. Last and certainly not least is Angela Pilgrim. She chose Emma Amos. And we can see here that instead of using fabric, Angela used paper. And Emma Amos is known for the textile fabrics that she uses merged within the works, her print works. And this is a risograph. And that will be all that I'll be showing you on today. And thank you for looking at the Black Women of Print 2019 inaugural portfolio, and look out for our 2021. Next up is Leslie.
Hi. Thank you, Tanikia. It was so fun to see the portfolio. I'm actually going to turn my camera around because I think my phone is shattered. Only on this side though. So what I really want to show you guys is a lot to do with the process that I work on in production. So, you know, I have a small space. I flip this around so I could see what I'm up to. So yeah, oh, there we go. Yeah, so I work out of my room and I also sleep and live in here. And it's been really fun to have a space that's mine that I can do whatever I want in. And as a printmaker, a lot of my identity comes from process, and it's the journey that's really the destination in a lot of the work that I do. Partially because after I'm done with it, I have to then give it to the artist. So to keep something of a printer's proof for that production, for that memory, for that honor, the gift of the artist signing something that I created for them is always a fun, shareable moment. And in a lot of the things I've been learning over the years with doing jobs, right, really laborious physical jobs, printing for others, I really, you know, never have to work out. That's a benefit. But I get the experience of the 10,000 hours that it takes to master any type of print production, especially. But it's taught me a lot about manufacturing. It's taught me a lot about recyclables and the need for renewables, both in terms of that being conceptual in a way that allows me to look back at my past and to reference what I've been and where I've been in a way that will help me identify what I want in a future and in a future of my business and success. This is a nice time, especially for evaluation, is I've been able to teach a screen printing class at Cooper Union. Hello, everyone, if you're watching, and thank you for tuning in and for listening and trying your best. But not having had the experience of teaching before this, it's actually kind of an opportunity to share with others what I've been doing already in the last 3 years that I've been running Diuguid Press. And I started it as a way to really identify what ownership means to me. It's been great to learn, right, the ropes from somebody else who is generous enough to teach you. But on the other end of the spectrum, after knowing and putting a lot of my life into dressing up, right, going out, having a blast, but doing that very selectively and in a way that helps my future and establishes myself in a way where I can always meet new people and have that support system and structure. As a Black woman, you know, occasionally, especially in New York, it's hard to kind of get a job that's within your ability and not boring, right? But also exciting. And so I've had a lot of those within the field of printmaking. So I'm always joyously excited to learn as much as I can from the skillful people willing to teach me. And so in the last few years, I put together somewhat of a zine, or I guess this was just a few months ago. You know, COVID's kind of scrambled my sense of time, but you know, that's allowed me to do more reflecting. So what I was getting at with teaching this class, right? I've got this ability to look back at all this experience, unpack all of my baggage, right? And see the basic structure that's within. And it's given me a lot of clarity in terms of being able to finally have time and space to identify what I want, but also how I can change what I want to see done in a way that structures the laborer as the top of the pay pyramid. So in that way, I'm kind of restructuring my business to be more of an art practice, but it's very collaborative in the way that
again, I'm doing the production on behalf of someone else. So it always takes a lot of approval along the way and a lot of communication about what is expected. So if that's not too confusing, I also, am coming to this point of, well, when I started my business, I was turning 30, right? And that's a simple time to think of reflecting back at your first third of life. And I've always kind of had that vision as a child. Every birthday I've had, it was always like, okay, well, what was my life like half my life ago? I always had this, even as like 6 years old. I remember thinking like, well, 3 years old, I was just a baby. So now I'm an adult, thinking 6-year-old me. But it's all relative is the point. And I think that having an understanding of where you've been physically can help, again, inform your future. My dad even just reminded me this morning, hi, Daddy, if you're watching, that I started my business. I was turning 30. It was also my grandfather's 100th birthday. He had passed away at the time. But because he had passed away, I was able to inherit some of the money that, came from his estate. So it was nice to estate, whatever, you just get inheritance. So I was able to take that money and start my business and start my press based off the experience that I had and finally own a lot of the work that I was doing. And again, it's bartering, right? I'm learning all this from friends. I'm becoming friends with my coworkers. Hello, everyone, if you're watching, I love you dearly. And I'm, excited to always have that relationship with others when you have to anticipate somebody else's movements in order to get something done correctly without making more work for yourself. And so all of that is in setup, and all of that is in making yourself ready to be prepared for life, right? Structure, printmaking, whatever type of production you're in, you have to prepare yourself to accept that knowledge and information. So after my grandfather passed away, I got this tattoo, right? And then I started my business. So it was cool to be able to do it backwards, right? I've never had a very linear life. I know this story isn't very linear either, but I am very observant when it comes to noticing flaws in prints as you're doing multiples. I was eyeballs on press for a long time and just paper handling. But that gave me a sense of material, right? And quality. So I'm able to take those experiences and bring those to what I know I can produce in my little room. So I've been living in this space for the last year and change, but I was living in a big rectangle where I came up with Diuguid Press with Royal Jarman. He helped me build it. And a few other friends came together to help my vision come true. So I wanted to show you a few little things in my space that I think you might get a kick out of. I certainly do. Here's some Aya Brown prints that we're going to look at in a little bit. But my press is kind of funky because it's got micro registration. I put some bananas on this so that it makes it cuter. And so we've got about 1/4 of an inch wiggle back and forth. More so on this side, less so on this side, but it does its duty. And it's actually all set up because it doesn't have any locking mechanisms because it's just super duper heavy. So this is probably about 3/4 of an inch of solid aluminum, and that's way too much. It actually is super duper heavy. And this is 1/8 of an inch wide hole, so it's like the things I didn't know when I was having this made by my roommate, Matthew Gomez, very great builder. I didn't know that these holes were going to be way too big. So I have a funny amount of section that I have to control as I print, which is actually controlled by this vacuum pedal, trying to move slowly so I don't make you barf. So this vacuum pedal is actually connected to a physical vacuum that's on this end of the press. And it's just connected through the bottom, so it's a very simple machine, and it's all connected with stuff that I got from McMaster Carr. So having access to these materials really gave me a lot of power in terms of also knowing how color theory works. So I've got these Aya Brown prints, and it was really great to work with her on these because, she's an incredible artist. She's an amazing drawer. And I was asked through Danny Lohman to produce Baez. I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. But it was really fun to work with them because he does a lot of art fair work, and they came together in a previous job. So all of this background actually goes a lot more into how perfect I like to make the prints, knowing where people came from and how they see things makes it easier to talk with them about what I can actually achieve. You know, if all things go right, you know, then you can actually get a lot of detail work done in a way that's pretty solid in my book. But, you know, that's because I've been making colors professionally for a long time, and it became a lot easier to do it precisely because I built this press to have very exact micro registration abilities. So those three were great. I started those around when COVID started. I'm gonna leave this here a minute and get a different, oops. That make me upside down, sorry about that. I'm gonna get a different print real quick. This zoo print was really fun because it's just so fun to think of this as a COVID moment as well. COVID being in terms of quarantine. In the beginning of COVID, my uncle Ross, great uncle Ross, died, and we went to his funeral. This is in February. My cousin and uncle is a doctor, Dr. Diuguid, and he, you know, COVID was just a thing coming about, and I was asking, what do we do if it becomes a problem? And he said that, oh, we'll all just have to stay inside until it goes away. Like, we have to just quarantine. And he was right. This isn't really working, is it? Well, we can kind of see the detail. But a lot of the drama I wanted to bring to the table is in kind of making a tunnel vision into that backspace, and to say that you have this time and pause in order to come together into a room, right, in a window that's beyond your understanding. But that color is actually vibrant and brings more contrast. So it really just makes your eye gravitate towards that space. Okay, now I'm gonna go get another one. You just stay put. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, we're gonna put this on the wall because it's just tricky to put on the table. Erin Lynn Welsh and I started Do Good in Unity in 2018. And it was a platform that was her idea. And we came together to create this project that allowed artists to decide where their funds from their print sales could be donated. And so with that as the concept, I needed to structure a way for this to be as easy as possible, to make as much money as possible for these different organizations on behalf of these women. And so Tanikia Word's print was part of this year's category that, like she said, was acquired by the Met. So in 2 years' time, we've done 3 different sets of women, and it's been incredibly, A, a lot of work, but B, very worth it, because it shows that, you know, certain structure. I've been doing Do Good Press in conjunction with always having a day job. So, you know, taking what I know about process and print and production can actually be very worth it for a bigger community than just myself, if I have the energy to do it all. But, you know, I made this while I was working at Alexander Henrici, and his fine art studio was one of the first ones in New York to specifically focus on fine art production. I've been doing a lot more historical research. Not the first, but his first client was Jasper Johns. So he had a good reputation in the art world to, you know, get the social connections enough to work with Andy Warhol and become his favorite printer as well. But, you know, a lot of the things I learned while I was working with Alex had come to play into this print, which was also from 2018. And it's been super duper fun to work with friends that trust me to crop their work in a way that's acceptable, and then create different dynamic layers to get the point across, even though if it's not an exact match, it has a lot more to do with the feeling that's coming across and the depth that I knew Erin would really love and want to portray. And that comes to play in the final gloss that's kind of on there too, in the white areas. So her paintings are very glorious, but it was great to start this project with her, and then to have this edition come up. And, you know, whenever I have extras in terms of printers proofs, I always keep the weirdest for myself. You know, I tell the artist all the flaws about anything. And so this one had a little purple catastrophe and it just got a little purple on it. I use magnets to hold my prints in place. So anyway, okay, that's all I wanted to show. I have this one last thing, and then I'll be done, and I swear I'll be quiet. But so this original painting is by Deborah Ziss, and it's really beautiful and colorful and super duper nice. She asked me to edition it for her, and I just finished it up. It's going to be available on her website. I'll promote it on my Instagram, and Deborah's very amazing in letting me take on this challenge of her very, very colorful, beautiful print. Okay, Thank you so much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Leslie. That was great. If the rest of our panelists can also come back on and unmute, we have many, many questions. My first question, many questions for Tanikia. Many people want to know when the inaugural portfolio for Black Women of Print will be available and how do we find it?
Okay, so you can contact hello@blackwomenofprint.com to inquire about it. It came out December 2019, and we only have 1 or 2 portfolios left. I'm going to go and check inventory. We made an addition of 13. Each founding member who was a part of the portfolio received one. We have one that's going to an institution, and then the other ones were left for collectors. And I should note that we use Mohawk paper throughout it. So we partner with Mohawk paper. And that's when, and they'll have one too within their archives, in which they'll take to AIGA and various design conventions and things like that, so that they can also represent Black women of print within that realm as well. So just contact me, hello@blackwomenofprint.com, if you're interested in getting more information about the portfolio, because we are down to 1 or 2.
Great. Question for Deleta
Yes.
from Shelley Langdale. Shelley is wondering how you came to mixing media in your prints and wondering if Emma Amos was an influence or inspiration.
She absolutely was. A matter of fact, I wrote about her in my thesis. She and Elizabeth Catlett were 2 of the main artists that I wrote about. I honestly, when I first started making prints, I think a lot of times we're conditioned to just be printmakers or just be painters or, you know, to just stay in your lane. And so when I left the university to go into my studio full time, one of the challenges that I set for myself was to go in the studio and be a creator and not focus so much on particular mediums. I identify as a printmaker. That's where I'm most comfortable, but I'm also comfortable with bringing in other mediums and being confident enough to say, this is a print.
Great. We have another question for Deleta. Susan Halper is wondering if these are portraits of actual women.
Some of them are. The ones that I showed you today, actually are, but I have what I call spirit women. And those are women that are influenced from people in the community. So it could be my mother's eyes, my grandmother's smile, you know, the body gesture of the lady across the street that helped to raise me. So those are what I call spirit women. And they appear in my work and they interact with women that I actually know. I became very interested in that, I'd say probably about 2 years ago. I was interested in how we as women become the spiritual other, but also how we interact with the spiritual other. And so you begin to see the 2 figures together. Much like the piece behind me here, you can kind of see the figure, which is actually a self-portrait of me, but I'm interacting with a spirit figure. And sometimes they show up as silhouettes and other times they show up as actual portraits.
Great. And this is a question for everyone. One of our viewers is wondering, she says, I'm just starting to build my studio space. Is there any piece of equipment for your studio that you wished you had invested in earlier than you did? What would you start with?
An etching press.
You know, gosh, that's a really hard one because it's like, as a printmaker, you really want everything. But I'm gonna say, don't discount those little conveniences that people always say, well, oh, you don't really need that. I like to add those in for personal comfort, for myself to kind of, you know, set my studio space the way I like it. So, you know, the special rack for the brayers, or you know, the rack for your scraper bars, you know, just those conveniences and building your studio to where you're comfortable.
And I'm in the process right now building my studio as far as organization, but I'm a big organization buff. So that has been my biggest, thing. I like to be organized, but I would say getting an etching press was beautiful for my arms.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to say this as advice. Someone told me this, and it's so true. No matter how much space you have, you're always going to need 10% more.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even matter across the board. You're always going to outgrow. So it's always fun to, kind of set your studio up to your convenience, for your convenience.
Great. We have a question from Megan that's for all of you. Megan says, I'm curious how you all met and how this community formed, and how have you kept it going strong during COVID?
Well, the first person that I reached out to was Deleta. I admired her work. I contacted her during my doctoral program to interview her. And I decided to also interview her for Pressing Matters magazine. So that's kind of how I met Deleta, and she's been like my big sister ever since. So I started talking to her and just told her about the idea that I had for Black Women of Print and wanted to see if she would join. And she said, and from there, she recommended people. And then I reached out to other people like Stephanie Santana. I've known her as an internet friend for over 10 years, and we have yet to meet in person. So that's kind of how the formulation of the group happened, basically from word of mouth, talking to one another. And how we've kept up during COVID is the same way that we've just been doing before. We're a very tight-knit group. So we talk, some of us have various interests because, we're not monolithic. Cultural nuances do exist. So we talk to each other. We do happy mail, snail mail, basically, with different care packages for one another, text, and, group chat sometimes, those type of things.
Great. We have another question for Deleta. Wondering if the Art is Activism, Say Our Names, and I Can't Breathe prints are digital reproductions of your original relief and intaglio prints.
Yes, they are. They are digital reproduction.
Great, thank you. And along those lines, also wondering, did Deleta and T.G. Hobbs recarve the images in the Black Women of Print portfolio? Those images that came from Catlett and Hobbs. We're wondering how you adapted and reused the images from the elder artists in this portfolio.
For me personally, it wasn't a recarving of her image. Yeah. It was my image, but her carving technique I've studied for years, and it has deeply influenced my carving style. So it's not exact to her, but she's absolutely an influence. And if you look at my work, if you know print and you know printmakers, you would recognize her as being one of the many artists that I've studied.
And can I just piggyback on that? So the theme was continuum, and we talked about past, present, and future. We chose visual elements. So nothing was reproduced from any of the artists. We looked at a visual element. So for instance, if there was like stippling, which you saw in LaToya's work of Margaret T.G. Burroughs, that's a technique that Margaret used, and she decided to use it, but she expanded on it with her hand gestures from her memory. So those are the different things that we're talking about. We're talking about an expansion, not just taking from our foremothers, but continuing the legacy.
Perfect. That's beautiful. We have a question from Ann Marshall. Ann, did you want to jump in?
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with what I had said earlier about, I know from talking to Tanikia, your guys are getting close to having your 501c3 and raising some funds to support the work you want to do in the future with this organization, which has a lot of possibility to grow. And I wanted to see if you had any, if you wanted to tell us a little bit more about the plans for that and how we can donate money.
So if you are interested in donating, you can go to www.blackwomenofprint.com, and there's a donate button there. So basically, we are a digital platform for right now. We raised money so that we could go and restructure our branding as well as our digital platform, which will be coming out mid to late November. We have entire new logos, an entire new website that I believe that you all are going to love. We'll have archives on there, blog posts talking about various things. I'm working on a specific zine that will be produced for Black Women of Print. So the zine will start coming out quarterly in 2021. So that's something, a project that I'm working out, talking to various Black women printmakers who are the present as well as the past. So it'll have something that's didactic and entertaining within that. We are also working on programming so that we can have digital content accessible and free, as well as some paid programming. We are working on forums to be embedded into the site, also a library. And we are also raising funds so that we can have some autonomy within Black Women of Print by building a library of archives for prints produced by Black women printmakers from the past and the present, so that we can start collecting those things and also be able to have that on loan for various exhibitions, as well as producing books and getting books that speak about Black women printmakers, to have that in our archives as well for women who are unable to purchase the books, that we can kind of have those loaned out and sent back in. And we're also opening up membership as well to expand Black women printmakers for mid-career and established printmakers.
Wonderful, thank you. I know we talked about the archive idea, and I want everybody at the IFPDA to be paying attention, because something, you know, it's again, we're looking at ways we can collaborate. So thank you so much. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
So we have time for a couple of more questions. There were a few questions for Leslie that all revolved around the theme of sort of balancing your work as an artist with your work as a master printer, and how your work as a master printer influences your work as an artist.
You know, we're coming up with new wording instead of that. Tanikia, I'll let you take on that first.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, so we don't use the term master printer. We have decolonized the language within our organization. So what most Eurocentric labor groups will consider master printers, we consider established printmakers.
So springboarding off of that, thank you. It's been really great to have a network of Black women to speak to these issues about. You know, I often feel crazy because I'm the only one of me, right? And not in terms of we're all individuals, of course, but when it comes to seeing myself, I often don't know who I am because I don't see Black women around me, you know? So having a group of Black women is a very strong support system to validate the fact that I'm not crazy. Sure, I'm different, but they're all different in their own unique ways as well. And to balance out how I put myself on hold in order to prioritize a production of someone else's, I really need to dive into dissecting how they did it, right? And my first interest in art came from that love of color, right? That love of balance and that love of structure, and seeing those elements in different people's work. I can look at that scientifically. I can look at that as a journalist. I can use all of the creative knowledge that I've built up as a scientist, doing all these color theory works to make them unique, and bridge that with what I know layers nicely. So it takes a lot of like journalistic science approach to how I go about recreating somebody else's work. But when it comes to my own intent and my own practice, I have, you know, experienced things, and my job is to record that in an artwork. And hopefully the recording process is what's really the art practice that I care for most. Sharing that with others is the benefit. That's the icing on the cake for me. Did that answer any question?
I think it did. I think that answered a lot of questions.
Thanks.
All right, I think that is a good place to wrap up. There are many, many messages in here thanking you all for letting us see your space and letting us into your process. Thank you, Tanekeya, Deleta, Leslie, and Anne for coming together. And thank you all for joining us.